Hey, I'm Arek. You probably know me as Ivel. I work with co-weavers on Proton. You probably know me from that, or like being on the X.Org board, or from organizing the previous XDC. I am going to talk about wine and windowing, especially on X11, and how hard it is. So, disclaimer, expect a lot of cursed stuff, and there's a lot of weird things going on that Wayland doesn't have to deal with. So what we are doing here, we're trying to layer API. So basically you have 38-year-old API that just amalgamated a lot of stuff over the years, and we're trying to map that on even older API, and both of them kind of evolved in different directions. Luckily for us, X11 is kind of the same level as Win32, because Wayland is, you just seen what Wayland does, and other challenges that it comes with that. So the thing that was mentioned that does all of that is Wine X11 driver, which translates the X11 world into Win32 world and vice versa. The thing about it, it's extremely fragile. Basically, getting up contributions into it upstream is very tough process, like getting through reviews, getting through all testing on different window managers. And whenever you get anything upstream, usually that's a reason for celebration, and I mean that literally. And after that, usually what comes is regret, because you broke something on some obscure configuration that was working for the last 20 years and now doesn't. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on there. So let's talk about a little bit of nastiness around X11. Let's talk about mode setting. We try to map the concepts from one API onto the other as close as we can. And as you can see, this is what happens, because there's mode setting in X11, there's mode setting in Win32. The same thing goes with Gamma. You probably run some game, like older DirectX game, that crashed or haven't exited cleanly and ended up with like weird sized desktop, and then Gamma was all blown up, or like weird things happening. So we are trying to avoid all of that, and we have something in Proton that's downstream that's called full screen hack that tries to mitigate some of this. Because like it's never pleasant. So basically we introduce a level of abstractions that's not part of the upstream wine. We would like to maybe have it at some point in upstream wine. We'll see how that goes, but current shape is not really upstreamable. So the idea is that you never mode set. You try to do image scaling, accelerate it whenever you can. And there's also ladder and pillar boxing going on demand if you need that sort of thing. There's also Vulkan shader for scaling that we have. There's OpenGL Gamma shader because it's mostly for the older games that use WinD3D for DirectX 1 through 8. It's quite large, 2,800 lines in just the Wine X11 driver, and 1,100 lines in the Vulkan loader. It's kind of nice thing, but it's not really necessary with X-Wayland. And also X11 is still everywhere. Hello, NVIDIA users. And it's downstream specific to Proton, so that's something that just we spur users of that. So next thing, let's talk about inconsistency. So we say that X-Wayland fixes things for us, but it has also its own quirks. So let me paint you a picture, and by a picture I mean like a simple 20 by 20 pix map, and we'll have a window, and we'll make that window green. We did the buffer flip, and like everything is fine. Let's now switch color to red. Red's painted again, and let's do a buffer swap. So we switched from green to red, and we're currently red. And let's guess what happens if you try to copy area. So we are copying 20 by 20 pixels from upper left corner to that pix map, and then copying it back onto the window. If you think that it will stay red, as it used to stay, then you are thinking X11. This is what happens on any of X11 window managers. But if you start thinking Wayland, suddenly you copied the pixels of the front buffer, then painted them on the back buffer, and somehow flip happened, without you requesting that explicitly. We have discovered that in Cyberpunk 2077, probably you've heard about that game, where the launcher was flickering horribly. It's built using Qt Web Engine, it uses OpenGL rendering, and for whatever reason, it does bit bleed 2x2 square on the window like every 1 second. So basically, the damage tracking is broken because of that, and it updates the wrong buffer, and then it flips when it shouldn't flip, and then like flickers in very weird ways. So we've reported that against Gamescope. We really don't know what to do about that. Like, if somebody wants to poke at it and like tame the snakes, then please do. Currently, we're just set like hack it, and we are forcing software rendering for just the launcher, and like it works. So let's talk about fragmentation. Let's talk about window managers. So that's mostly solved now, right? We had awesome spec that was like WM spec. The goal of it was to unify the window manager hints across GNOME and KDE, and everybody was on board. And when you look up that in DuckDuckGo, Google, or whatever other search engine of your choice you have, you're going to end up on this page. And like, it looks nice. There's a mailing list. There's a version 1.4 draft 2. That's the latest one available, so things are moving. Yeah, if you go to the mailing archive, they mentioned that it's obsolete since October last year. And basically, it should be superseded by GNOME's discourse, but there's nothing related to this on that. And if you look at the repository, it hasn't been updated in 9 years. So it's probably a done deal, right? So why the version is 1.4? If you poke at the repository, it turns out it's 1.5. And just the wiki page that we've landed before on is updated, because you should go to specifications.freedesktop.org, and actually the latest version is 1.5. And so I opened an issue about this, and like, maybe we should take down that wiki page, maybe we should do something about it. And back in the days, like we were talking MetaCity days, 10 years ago, most of the window managers had actually like a compliance file mentioning that they implement this version of the standard, and people cared about it. But since then, since we have Matter now, since other window managers have updated, nobody explicitly like mentions the standard, other than like maybe a little bit comment in the source code about things being broken. So not sure what to do with that. And the question that I posted in this issue is also, yeah, can we contribute to it? More on that a little bit later. Or is it considered a done deal and like don't touch this thing anymore? So speaking of window managers, let's talk about Matter and some issues we have with that. You probably recognize the thing. People like racing games, and people like having fancy racing game setups. So they build a chair, they have a screen, and quite often they add extra screens on the side. So you have like a side window view, you have like your windshield view, and usually this is a one window that spans multiple screens. And WM spec has an awesome thing called NetWM full screen monitors, which allows us to span a window like that. Yep, it's great. It does the exactly same thing what we should do and what we expect it to do. The problem is it cannot be unset, and that's part of the spec. So this breaks behavior on multiple window managers when you suddenly go from multi-screen, full screen to a single screen or like a window. Because then suddenly moving the window is hard, and suddenly you cannot move it to another desktop. Weird things happen. So for balance, let's talk about KWin. For example, KWin doesn't allow moving window where you have NetWM state full screen set. So sometimes applications want to move a window. So let's go to settings. Let's switch which display the window should be on. So we just move the window and it's still full screen, right? It works on all the window managers except for KWin, so we have like a little bit of special casing. But to be honest, we cannot blame that on both of the compositors anyway, because this is weird usage case. And this is not specified as a part of X11 or any of the libs or any of the protocols or any of the specifications. So they have a freedom of do whatever we want. And this is just something we have to deal with because we are translating low-level API into another level API. So let's talk about Matter again. The thing is that also whenever you try to map a window, it unminimizes, which is sensible thing to do because you map a window, and also it's not a part of the standard. And also, who would do that? We do that, and we have a use case for that. So basically, we have to re-minimize that window again. It's weird. Let's also talk about some games because there are some nasty games, and let's talk about focus string prevention. You probably had an issue when like you launched a game and it wasn't unfocused for some reason. Yeah, so what do? There was this game that starts with far and ends with try primal. It started unfocused, the taskbar was visible, and that only happened on KDE. And after manual focusing, so if you clicked on the window, controller didn't work. And like, what's going on here? We were trying to figure out how it's going on, because like on GNOME, on every other window manager, it was working just fine. So I take a look at what the game does, and this is the sequence. So it creates 1 by 1 pixel window, then it shows it, then it minimizes it, then does something for 2 seconds, then it restores that window, then it resizes it to the full screen, then it does something more, and then it requests to focus that window. As this is for a production program that I wrote to make sure that it's focus link prevention, and this behavior that does that, and I'm looking at that and like, yeah, this is the thing. Like this dance they are doing, like what's the reason for that? What can we do about it? I was considering like doing workarounds, ignoring some of those events, but that would be a very brittle hack just for a single game. So after a little bit of consideration, I decided if I was a window manager, I would also find that suspicious, and that's fine. So we just instead made a partial fix to make sure that the focus state is synchronized between us and the game, and like the game knows that it's not focused anymore. And then when we refocus, it's actually the controller works, because they have like word logic related to focus where it just toggles the controller support. So when you unfocus the game, it toggles it, and then when you focus, it toggles it again. So if you end up desynchronizing the state, suddenly the controller doesn't work when it's focused, but works when it's unfocused. So in all of that, let's also talk about Gamescope. Gamescope is our savior, kinda. It's designed for games. It uses Wayland, and it's really designed to work with what we are doing. We even expose some extra hints and style information to as a window properties, so they can make better informed decisions about what to focus or how to handle layered windows, because that's also another kind of worms. And it works great. Like that's basically the use case, and everybody now wants to have it integrated in Steam and just like run your games through that as a nested compositor, because it works. So the question is what we do from now. My conjecture is that desktop X11 is kind of solved, and by that I mean nobody pokes at the dark corners, because you have toolkits, you have GTKs, you have Qts of this world that basically are very uniform in what they are doing, and they are well tested, and they are supported by all the window managers. But then there comes Wine with Wine X11, where we poke at the dark corners of XLib, and we're doing things that nobody else is doing. And that was never tested, used in any scenario before. And then we also have this driver. Because of that, like any change to Wine X11 can cause a butterfly effect and like breaks a lot of other stuff. So since it's impossible to get things exactly right without more extensions and WM involvement, what do? Do we resurrect WM spec? Do we introduce another spec where we expose like more of the wine state or Win32 site state and let window managers to start implementing support for that? I have no idea if you have suggestions, if you want to fix that Wayland bug that I mentioned, or if you know what we should do now, just let me know. And yeah, so I work for Codeweavers. If you want to work on Wine, we are hiring right now. Do you have any questions?
Oh, is it working? Okay.
Yes.
Can we get the Gamescope specific like Wine window properties in upstream? Because quite a lot of users end up using Wine with Gamescope, and that ends up having a completely different focus situation where some things don't work. And we really rely on the Win32 window styles to make good informed decisions in Gamescope.
Yes, and I would like to be the case. That's not up to me. I'm not a maintainer of Wine. I only deal with like the Proton stuff. I think like trying to standardize them a little bit, like, and provide documentation instead of just saying, hey, this is what we are doing, you can use it. So people actually know what they are looking at, because like not everybody is familiar with Win32 world, would be a good step forward. And like also we could ask other window manager and compositor authors if they're interested. I think that would help this case. It would be awesome to have that upstream though.
Hi, thanks for this very entertaining talk.
Thank you.
Can't we just fork the WineX11 driver into a WineX Wayland driver to get more stuff upstream and to never touch the kind of working X11 code again?
What do you mean by forking?
Then basically just copy it, don't modify the version that runs on normal X.Org, and patch the X Wayland one.
I guess that would be also bad in a way, because then you have like two places where you sometimes have to fix things, because we still hit like legit bugs, because like some new game uses Win32 API in entertaining way. So we have to fix that in WineX11. So that means now you have two drivers that you have to fix, and you have also all the special casing. It would get confusing pretty easily. So I think it would be better to just integrate that into the current X11 and like do a little bit more special casing. But that's also not very nice. So that's why most people nowadays, I guess, don't use upstream Wine. They use Proton and Proton offsprings. Just because they allow for all of that. And we try to maintain that and make sure that it all works. Whereas upstream tries to be a little bit more Puritan.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I'm interested in the more long-term solution to all of this mess. And I've been thinking for a while, and I'm wondering if, like, we are trying to make Win32 into either X11 or Wayland or like a different API. So there will always be an impedance mismatch. There will always be cases where it will not exactly like match the Win32 semantics, and we need to like do some workarounds and whatever. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering if we could have like use Alexandro's work and the Wayland thing, and completely whip out the part where it talks to XDG shell, and completely replace that with Win32 shell. Like you still get the same ways to pass the buffers and get input and all of that, but the window management part is completely mirrors what Win32 is doing, and then Gamescope Gamescope and maybe other compositors, if they want to, can basically have a perfect view of what Win32 is expecting, and yeah, that will be like completely mirror Win32.
I think this is a valid approach, and it has been kind of explored through two venues. First one is with WineX11. You have something called virtual desktop. So basically, it creates window, and like this is your desktop, and everything is inside of it. It's not perfect, and it's not exactly what you're saying, but like this is the way we explore that, and it doesn't really suit well some other use cases outside of games, because for games it's mostly fine. Like you want to run Gamescope, which is another, like, I guess, partial venue of that, because we have like better cooperation with them, and we expose those extra hints. But there's a bunch of people, for example, that use it, Wine and other stuff for office work, and they want like normal desktop window applications, not full screen games. So they want proper integration with your desktop environment, which is like a regular desktop environment. So the answer historically for that was to try to do the mapping as good as we can and hope for the best, instead of trying to like those more confined implementation approach.
Yeah, I think we should have both. Like we should have a best effort mapping for like everybody else, and we should have something very specific to Win32.
I think it's a pretty good approach. The question is, will it end up in upstream? Because if it ever, if it won't get accepted and it's something that you would need to maintain, for example, in Proton downstream, that's not a fun thing to do and not really sustainable. So
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely worth discussing. I'm not sure how smooth on that because the virtual desktop feels kind of neglected anyway. And this was already like an attempt on fixing some of the X11 issues.
Yeah, thanks.
What's missing from upstreaming the so-called full screen hack?
It's that it's just very invasive and very, very large. As I've said, like it's 2,800 lines, which in terms of Wayland is a lot. And it's mostly focused on full screen games. And we don't really know what it breaks with desktop applications, and Wine is also used for that. And as I have said, Wine X11 is brittle, and people are afraid to touch it. And upstreaming anything there and the amount of testing necessary just takes forever. So we've just decided that the pain of rebasing it is more bearable than actually trying to upstream it. And as I've said, like it's not that necessary with Wayland because the viewporting there and the isolation provides is pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, to expand on that, I think it was never a goal for us to upstream full screen hack, and we were always picturing that in the future something like Gamescope would be integrated better and address that issue.
Yes, that's definitely a case as well. Like it was from the beginning, from the inception, a temporary solution for Proton. There are some voices that it would be useful because Wine also has a macOS backend, so it renders there as well, and they could use something very similar. That's people from upstream, that people working on that were talking about it, but I'm personally not involved in this, and I'm not very interested myself.
That is a question from Matrix. Would Wayland be a better driver for Proton?
Can you repeat the question?
Would Wayland be a better driver for Proton?
That's an interesting thing. So far, I don't think so, because like it's still in very early development and it still requires a lot of extra protocols. Maybe with some extra protocols it would be good, but I don't think it would provide any benefit when it comes to like rendering times or like saving, like we would save maybe one copy with it. And there's like another kind of worms where you would need to test all the games or a backlog that we know that works with Wine X11 on Wayland. And yeah, just the amount of missing protocols and how untested it is and how big the game library is, currently it's not really feasible. In the future, once it matures, definitely worth considering, but not for now.
Not really a question, but to just answer Timur's thing about the full screen hack, it's not really needed on Wayland or any Wayland compositor because we have WP Viewporter there, which basically does the same thing on the compositor side.
Yep. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.